The Jahmyr Gibbs discussion, I think, is such a fascinating one because no matter what side you were on, really, it feels like you can still say, oh no, I was actually right about that, which is why it's kind of almost an unwinnable argument in many ways. So I guess it's not exactly true. If you thought Gibbs would be trash, then like you've probably been wrong about that. But in general, it seems like the two main takeaways that people had were either A, Gibbs is a good player. The Lions drafted a good player at number 12. Whether it's a reach or not, he's a good player. Now to have a good player, and now that he's been good, they can kind of say, well, yeah, we were right. The other main argument was like, yeah, Gibbs is probably going to be a good running back, but it's just a reach. He's probably not going to be good enough value at that pick given his positions, which again, you can sit here and say like, yeah, Gibbs was good, but like, we knew Gibbs was going to be good. That wasn't the discussion. So in many ways, it's a very frustrating conversation to have because everybody is convinced that they're still right about this. Well, who is right about this? Or better yet, let's just give the best argument for both sides of the coin, and then I'll let you make your decision, what you think the case is. So first, I have to talk about, myself, right? That's fair. What did I think about all of this going into the, once the draft happened? Well, I went back, I watched what I had to say. Here's a clip of it. It's going to be, how long is it going to be? It's going to be about 25 seconds. So I'll see you in 25 seconds.
I think Gibbs is going to be a really good running back for them. I think he's going to really help out the roster. But I don't love his blocking, which is a bit of an issue when I don't feel like you're a complete running back and you're getting selected at 12. Maybe they feel like they can fix it. I don't know. But that is a concern for me. It's running back value. They just don't have a ton of value at pick number 12, in my opinion. This is the move you make when you're trying to compete right now. They're trying to compete right now. That's what they're doing.
Okay, so I had three main points about the Gibbs pick when I give my first reactions to it. The one was I don't love Gibbs' blocking. I don't feel like he's a complete running back. That's how I felt at the time. Number two was that I think that running backs aren't worth being selected with the number 12 overall pick. And then number three would be that it is the kind of move that you do make if you're trying to compete for a Super Bowl right now, which the Lions were trying to do. So that was kind of a defense towards these selections. So that's how I felt going into it. So let's tackle these one at a time. First, the easiest one, his blocking. Let's just knock that out right away. How has that been? Well, if we look at his Pro Football Focus grades, a lot of good grades there, but the pass blocking, quite frankly, atrocious at 26.8. And that's, again, run blocking is basically, it happens a little bit more with the Lions. But really, when I mean blocking, I mean like blitz pickup, which was a big issue in college. According to PFF, still a big issue here in the NFL. So, okay, that's, maybe was a fair criticism to have about him as a player. But again, other than that, I think we all kind of agreed he would be a good player, a good rusher of the football. So the question becomes the running back value discussion. And we're going to have to talk about the running back value discussion and what it really means to be a valuable running back. So first, to talk about it, I think we have to look at some of the top running backs in the league and maybe use some advanced metrics. For example, here, Derrick Henry, if you look at his PFF WAR, you see that his best WAR season in the past 3 years was 0.21. Granted, he's had better years prior to 2021, but the PFF page here only goes back to that far. So, okay, last year he had a 0.2 WAR, and his snap count was relatively similar to Gibbs. Gibbs had a little bit more snaps this season, but they're similar ballpark. So you can imagine Gibbs' WAR might have been around there, maybe a little bit lower, maybe a little bit higher, because he had a little bit more snaps, but also Derrick Henry, third highest graded halfback according to PFF. Gibbs was 19th highest graded. For a more extreme example, someone like Josh Jacobs, who in 2022, his highest graded PFF WAR season, his highest PFF WAR season was in 2022. He was Pro Football Focus's highest graded running back. He had a good amount of snaps, 821 snaps, and had a 0.28 PFF WAR. If we put that into contract terms, 0.2 WAR would be worth about $5.3 million. This is using last year's salary cap data, whereas 0.28 WAR is worth around $7.4 million. And it's always worth mentioning when we talk about this stuff. The goal is to get good contracts, not fair contracts, right? So, in a perfect scenario, you're not just trying to get 8.5 wins, which is what this is projected for, but trying to get like 13 wins like the Lions got last year. So, in terms of the just pure value of a running back, the WAR itself tends to not be that great. However, what I'm sure some people in the comments are already writing, which is true, is that there's a lot more value for a running back than simply what they do, on the football field or what they do with the football in their hands. A lot of it is the threat of the running back. I've said for years, I think Derrick Henry's biggest attribute is when he's on the field, simply the name on the back of his jersey. Teams have to kind of respect the run or feel like they have to respect the run, and because of it, it makes it easier to throw down the field. And there is absolutely some value in that. The question is just how much, and it's very difficult to quantify. Here is, I think, the easiest way to understand why it is usually not a good idea to select a running back number 12 overall. And again, we're just forget about Gibbs for a second. Why just in general, it's usually not a great idea to select a running back number 12 overall. We're comparing Gibbs to the top running backs. Josh Jacobs, when he was the highest graded running back of the season, most people agreed he was the best running back in football, and at least a lot of people did in 2022. Derrick Henry, Hall of Fame running back. These are the guys we're comparing him to. But what if you compare him to guys like that at different positions? Like they had a chance to get Jalen Carter if they didn't trade down. If you look at Chris Jones's Pro Football Focus page here, you see that, he had a season 2 years ago of 0.7 PFF WAR. So we're talking over triple what we're seeing some of these other, some of these top running backs get. And just like how running backs, a lot of their value comes from the threat of the running back, you could absolutely say the same thing about a pass rusher. Like those are, to me, definitely fair points for both of them. So if it's higher for a running back, it's probably higher for a pass rusher as well. Even Kendall Fuller, who isn't even the top, corner or anything like that, but he's a good corner, and you see him. His season, he's had, his best season, a 0.83 PFF WAR. So when you're comparing an elite corner with an elite running back, usually the elite corner or the elite pass rusher adds way more value than the elite running back, which is kind of my main argument of why I don't typically love to draft running backs this highly. I think people often compare it to, well, if Jahmyr Gibbs is an elite player and like everyone else is just like an okay player at other positions, well then Gibbs could be worth the draft pick, which is true. Like that's absolutely the case, that it could be a scenario where Gibbs at number 12 ends up being the right selection. It's just usually not the case. And again, you're kind of almost chasing the big fish with the running back, where a running back almost has to be awesome when you draft them that high, whereas other players, even if they're just good, it's it's worth it. Like again, to make the defensive tackle comparison, when you say Jahmyr Gibbs, it's like, well, if he's an elite running back, then it's worth it, right? You don't have to say that for a defensive tackle. It's obviously worth getting an elite defensive tackle at pick number 12. But whatever, right? That's not what we're talking about here. So I said all that, but does that really matter? Because we're talking about Gibbs itself, and we're trying to end the Jahmyr Gibbs discussion. Yes, all that stuff is very true. All that stuff, I think, realistically means it's usually not a good idea to select a running back number 12. But I did acknowledge there are times where it does make sense to select the running back number 12, or at least it can end up being the correct move to select a running back number 12. So how do we view, Gibbs? Well, let's look at the players that were drafted around him. Because, again, it's kind of weird to sit here and say, like, oh, well, they could have just drafted Jalen Carter, which probably would have been what I did, but then they wouldn't have been able to trade down, and they got Sam Laporta with one of those picks they traded down. So, like, that probably was the right move in hindsight, even if it's not one I would have done. So, again, you got to give them credit there. Even if you dislike the Gibbs pick, you have to say they did a lot of great stuff in the draft. No one's denying that. But let's just say they have the pick at number 12. Guys ahead of them, can't draft them. They made the trade down. Number 12, you see the next few picks would not have been very enticing. Lucas Van Ness, Will McDonald, I didn't think either had great rookie years. Broderick Jones showed flashes for Pittsburgh, but also definitely the Lions do not need a tackle. And then Emmanuel Forbes was a mess in Washington. You do then have a couple of good selections, Christian Gonzalez and Kalijah Cansey. You also see Jack Campbell with the Detroit Lions, who did not have a great year in year one. But again, it's year one. Can't jump to conclusions. But definitely, you could easily, in hindsight, say, clearly Christian Gonzalez would have been the move. And to be honest, for me, Kalijah Cansey and Christian Gonzalez would have been my picks in those two slots. That's what I said draft night. So I think that they probably maybe would be better off with those players. But again, it's easy to look at the chart after the fact and say, this guy would have been better. This guy would have maybe been better, when you see a lot of players that would have been worse than what they ended up with. So like if they ended up with Lucas Van Ness, like they probably would have gotten worse. So even though that would have been a move people wouldn't have criticized as highly, I think that there's definitely worse ways that this Gibbs pick could have gone. Again, to look at Jahmyr Gibbs's PFF page for like how just he personally played, like I said, blocking was not good, and that's something that has to get better. But everything else was very good. 12th best rusher of the football, 19th best receiving grade, and 19th best overall grade. And I should mention as well, he started slow. Like I think early on, he was like one of the when he was not really starting, he didn't really have great grades, but was great down the stretch. So he got better as the season progressed, and there is reason to expect him to get better as it continues to go on. So I guess all of this being said, what do we make of all of this? I think Lions fans probably want me to just say, yep, you know what, I was wrong about Gibbs, but really, I don't think I was. I think that I pretty accurately depicted who he would be as a player. I said I think he could challenge Bijan for being the best pure rusher this season. Like I said, I didn't think there was a big gap between those two, and I think I was proven correct about that. I said I didn't love his blocking. I think I was proven correct about that. Maybe I value blocking too highly, but I do think that's fair. And I also said I think he was going to be a great player and maybe even an offensive rookie of the year candidate. I was correct about all of that. So the evaluation side of things for Gibbs, I think we were all kind of on the same page that he was going to be good, and he's been good. I don't think that was ever up for debate. The running back value discussion is one that you just can't simply look at one measure and say, oh, solved or unsolved, which is part of why it's, again, sometimes a frustrating discussion. At the end of the day, if you like the Gibbs pick, you're still going to, after you're done with this video, probably still like the Gibbs pick. And if you disliked it after you watch this video, you're probably still going to dislike it. I think my final verdict is it's still a move I just never would make if I was a GM. I wouldn't even consider it. I still think the Lions have a great front office, and what they did, to me, the reason why they made the conference championship game wasn't because of the Gibbs pick. It was because of how many other great picks they hit on down the stretch, and how many other really smart moves they made these past few years, more so than just that one selection. I still think it's probably not the right move, but I will say that it has not been a disaster like maybe some people thought. And again, there was very rare scenario where this was going to be a complete disaster. But even looking at some of the picks past him, how they haven't really hit, it definitely is one of those situations where it was kind of a weaker draft class, and there is some logic behind it. So while it's not the move I would have made personally, I do think you can look at the results and say, well, it hasn't been that bad. It's probably been an okay move for them to make. There was a lot dumber picks in the first round. We can certainly say that. This was not even, I gave the Lions top 7 losers of night 1 of the draft in my initial video when I made it draft night. That's from the clip you saw. That was from that video. And in hindsight, I would not say that they were, a big top 7 loser of the first round, and they were top 7 winners when you factor in the later rounds. So yeah, that's what I think about Jahmyr Gibbs. Interesting discussion to be had. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.